Awesome. We're going to get started. This will be live streamed, so just giving folks a heads up. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erika Ortiz. I serve as the field organizer at the American Civil Liberties Union of Connecticut, and I use she, her pronouns. I am so excited and so pleased to invite you and welcome you to this conversation about the ACLU's 2024 legislative session. We are here to showcase the tireless work of our policy and advocacy team who work with our smart justice leaders to advocate for civil liberties and rights at the Capitol in Hartford. So today we'll talk where we are, who we are and the advocacy that we do and where we're going. There are exciting issues and opportunities ahead for the ACLU and the people of Connecticut. And we want to invite you to be part of that today and moving forward and really welcome you all into this conversation. So before we get started, I did want to go over a little bit of Zoom housekeeping items, excuse me. Just note that there is closed captioning available if you need that. So to activate this, there is a button at the bottom of your screen and select closed caption. This session, as I mentioned, is going to be recorded and live streamed and will be broadcasted on the ACLU social channels. And we also would like to say a special thank you to our ASL interpreter. And for the question and answer portion of our talk today, there is a Q&A button located at the bottom if you would like to use that. And so we do encourage everyone to ask questions if you feel called to, and you can direct those to any or all of our panelists today. And we will do our best to answer them during the portion of our conversation. If you cannot get your question to us, we will be sharing our contact information and ways to get in touch with the ACLU of Connecticut at the end of this discussion. You can also sign up for updates from our offices on our website at ACLU-CT.org. And we do encourage you to follow and interact with our social channels on all platforms just to keep up to date on the work that we're doing and where we're going. Again, just as a final reminder, there is closed captioning available and it is located at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so now that that's all out of the way, we're going to transition into getting into this discussion. So as an organization, we are committed to the values of anti-racism, equity, dignity, diversity, inclusivity, and centering the people who are most harmed by civil liberty violations and injustices. And to live these values, we seek to address the front end of the criminal legal system, policing and prosecutors, and the back end of the system, including the carceral system and the collateral consequences of living with a record, such as barriers to housing and employment. You can see these values will be reflected in the work that we've done during this legislative session and the work we will continue to do, and we are in commitment to doing. So first, we would like to talk with Gus. Gus is our interim campaign organizing manager. Gus works with Smart Justice leadership team with the rest of ACLU staff to make sure that our voices and the voice of the people are heard in the halls of power every day. So we're gonna welcome the panelists in and starting with Gus to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Gus, the interim organizing and campaign manager. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I've been here with the ACLU since 2018.
Thank you, Gus. And we'll welcome the rest of the team. Jess, if you would like to hop on to introduce yourself.
Hey, my name's Jess Zaccanino. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the policy counsel with the ACLU of Connecticut. And I've been with the affiliate for 3 years in September.
Anderson, you want to hop on next?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anderson Curtis. I am the senior policy organizer here at the American Civil Liberties Union of Connecticut. I have been with this affiliate for 6 years. Welcome to our webinar.
Thanks, Anderson. And last but not least, David, if you would like to join on to introduce yourself. Oh, you're on mute, David.
David McGuire, the executive director here. I've been here almost 17 years. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Awesome. So this is our wonderful and incredible team, and we will transition into our panel discussion now. So as I mentioned, Gus does do a lot of work with our Smart Justice leader and is our interim campaign manager. And again, a lot of the work is centered at the legislative office building and making sure that our voices are heard. And so, Gus, can you tell us about the movement building work your team has achieved this year?
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. And it may be hard to believe, but this is actually the sixth session that Smart Justice has been advocating at the Capitol. And Smart Justice is a campaign that works to reduce the number of people who are incarcerated here in Connecticut, to dismantle the collateral consequences and barriers people face when they're living with a criminal record here in Connecticut. And it's a campaign that's led by directly impacted people, people with a lived experience of being incarcerated here in Connecticut, which certainly includes myself. And over the last 6 years, we've developed an incredible presence at the Capitol. We are one of the most visible and persistent groups at the Capitol. This year, during the legislative session, we testified over 20 times, close to 30 times, I think, on over 10 different bills on a range of issues. Certainly on our priority issues, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second, just because we poured so much time and effort into those. But we also testified on bills that supported legislation on bringing higher education into the correctional system, ending cash bail, waiving the application fees for people who are seeking a pardon, and just cause protections for tenants who are facing groundless evictions, an effort that received a lot of attention this year. But we did spend the majority of our time on our two legislative priority bills this year. And I wanted to highlight some of the work that the Smart Justice leaders did on the first bill, bill that has to do with the collateral consequences on housing that people face when living with a criminal record here in our state. It was House Bill 5242, an act concerning the collateral consequences of criminal records on housing opportunities. And, for anybody, but particularly for people who are living with a criminal record, housing is one of the most challenging barriers that people face when they're simply finding a safe and stable place to live. And this is something that directly impacts all of the Smart Justice leaders, and they testified very powerfully to this during the bill's public hearing on February 27th. They explained not just the barriers that they faced as a person who was trying to find a place to live, but also about the journey they've been on to rebuild their lives and be able to move forward with their lives. Robin talked about trying to find a place to live with her fiance. Leslie talked about trying to find a safe place for her daughter to be able to grow up in. Lewis testified about how he's never been able to put his own name on a lease, even though he was the one that's paying rent for that apartment every month. And as the hearing went on, you could see the legislators reacting to the testimonies in really powerful ways. And a week later, after that public hearing, they all voted, not they all voted, but they did vote, they gave the bill a favorable vote out of committee, which was a huge deal for us. Our second legislative priority this year looked at the front end of the criminal legal system, which is looking at policing. And for a long time, we've looked to reduce the size, scope, and scale of policing here in Connecticut. And one of the most frequent interactions that people have with police is through traffic stops. So the bill we supported this year was House Bill 5324, which was an act establishing secondary traffic violations. And I mean, the reality is that when we look at some low-level traffic violations, things that do not contribute to accidents or crashes on the roadways, like having your windows tinted, having your license plate not properly displayed, maybe you have something hanging from your rearview mirror that technically obscures your windshield, things like having an air freshener, or maybe you have like a face mask hanging. Those are things that the police can pull people over for. And what we know from years of data being tracked is that Black and brown drivers in Connecticut are far more likely to be pulled over for those low-level offenses than white drivers are. And so what the bill would have done is create a category of secondary offenses, saying that police cannot use these low-level, non-safety related offenses to pull people over. If they want to mail them a ticket, they could do that. But police should be focusing on things that are truly dangerous, like people who are speeding or people who are driving through stop signs. There was a public hearing for that bill in the beginning of March, and I wanted to highlight a piece of testimony that one of the Smart Justice leaders, Lewis, different Lewis, actually gave. He was the final speaker in that public hearing. And he did something really powerful that I'd never seen before, where, like I said, he was the final speaker for the day. And when he sat down at the table facing the legislators and he introduced himself, he didn't talk for a few beats. He just kind of remained silent for maybe 20 or 30 seconds, which made the legislators feel, a little nervous. And then Lewis said, "Do you feel that discomfort, that confusion, that uncertainty?" It was this really powerful moment that I'd never seen before, where he brought his lived experience into a public hearing. So the legislators could just get a sense of what he's faced as a driver here in Connecticut. That bill also received a favorable vote out of the Judiciary Committee at the end of March. And in April, we had a big rally outside of the Capitol, which we partnered with the Center for Policing Equity on. We had a couple of their people come up to the Capitol and lobby with us towards the end of the year. And we also had the co-chair of the Judiciary Committee, Representative Steve Sasstrom, come and speak at that rally, which was also a really powerful moment. And just overall, looking at the entirety of the session, I could not be prouder of the work that the Smart Justice leaders did. We had some new faces this year, which brought some new energy and experience into our campaign. And that was paired up with the work of folks who have been with the campaign for a number of years, people like Will and Terry, who have really strong relationships and reputations with legislators at the Capitol, and they continue to deepen and grow those relationships, which all speaks to the reputation that we've built at the Capitol. And just kind of looking forward, because I know that's the name of our webinar, but I'm excited about next year. I'm excited about the 2025 legislative session. I don't want to stress out anybody, my colleagues on this call yet, but I think there's so many opportunities for us to continue doing the good work that we've been involved in over the last 6 years. So thank you, Erica.
Thank you so much for sharing, Gus. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of what that looks like when we're centering people with those lived experiences who have the opportunity to show up and advocate for themselves and speak directly on what they have gone through and how that positively impacts the work that we're doing. And I just wanted to emphasize that and share that. Thank you so much for giving everybody a lay of the land of ACLU and the work we've done this year at the legislature. And I think we are already starting to see how these issues ramp up in future legislative sessions and in our public education and awareness work even for this summer. So thank you, Gus. Moving along, next we will talk with Jess Zaccanino, our ACLU Policy Counsel. Jess helps to draft bills, refine policy language, and make sure that our core issues are well represented among the legislature. Jess is a technical expert, and I want to emphasize that again, a technical expert on many legislative priorities and knows how to make sure ACLU's voice gets heard in the ink of potential laws. So Jess, what has been your experience this session? Maybe talk about 2 or 3 biggest efforts and or wins.
Sure. Hey, so before I dive into some wins and takeaways from this session, I want to take a minute to explain what exactly my role is as policy counsel. So essentially, I'm a lawyer that lobbies at our state legislature rather than practicing law in a courtroom. That means I'm responsible for drafting bills, testifying on bills related to civil rights and liberties, policy research and analysis, and any of that other technical work that Eric said that goes into our legislative advocacy. If that sounds like a lot, it is. I ran the numbers for the 2023 long session, where we're at our absolute busiest, and I testified on about 200 bills, wrote about 800 pages of testimony, and lobbied for about 900 hours over 6 months. Short sessions, which we were just in, they tend to be quieter in general. This past session was particularly quiet. We pass budgets every 2 years in Connecticut during the long session and pass a budget implementer in the short years to adjust the budget as needed. Short sessions last for only 14 weeks, which means that there's much less time to tackle bills that involve long hours of debate. Short sessions are also followed by election campaign season. So taken together, this means there is little time, little money, and much trepidation about debating controversial bills. That means it's our job to push legislators to be courageous about the hard issues and act. So by far, the standout accomplishment of this session was a landmark expansion of paid sick days to virtually all workers in Connecticut. When we became the first state to require private companies to offer paid sick days in 2011, it covered only 12% of workers because it applied to companies that were 50 or more workers, limited to particular retail or service occupations, and exempted seasonal workers. But now, by 2027, all companies with one or more employees must provide paid sick days. The bill also expanded the definition of family to ensure that people can care for their loved ones and chosen families, and expanded access to safe days so workers can take care of a family member who experiences family violence, intimate partner violence, or sexual assault. This is a huge win for Connecticut families, especially working families and families of color. We also supported a couple of bills addressing homelessness in Connecticut, which is directly connected to our work in the collateral consequences of a criminal conviction when it comes to housing. We know that 79% of people who have been incarcerated have been denied housing because of their conviction, and they are 10 to 13 times more likely to experience homelessness than people who have not been incarcerated. So some bills that passed this year establish an interagency council on homelessness and require our departments of housing and mental health and addiction services to report to the legislature on some metrics regarding homelessness and ways to expand access to Medicaid waiver programs. And lastly, we passed House Bill 5381, which updates our state's guidelines on the use of police body cameras to include provisions on when officers cannot pause on their body cameras. Our current model policy allows police to turn off their body cameras if they determine that their investigation could be significantly hampered by continuing to record. If police are given broad discretion as to when they can turn off their cameras, key moments of constitutional violations are likely to go unreported. A guilty police officer who is a person with huge power could escape liability, and innocent people could go wrongfully convicted. There's always more work to be done, but the bills I highlighted are important steps forward. Our expansion of paid sick days to virtually all workers is an incredible moment to celebrate, one that's been in the making for almost a decade. There's still a lot of session to digest and reflect upon, but I wanted to lift up these wins in particular. I'm looking forward to the coming back the next year and after some rest, though. So thank you all.
Yes, Jess, please rest with all the testimonies you've written. I hope this summer you get lots of sun and lots of water. So thank you so much, Jess. Especially as your colleague, I just really value you and see how much work you do, and we all do. So we are really lucky to have you, Jess, for always crafting and piercing the substance of our efforts in innovative and workable ways. And there are so many skills and efforts that go into the work that we do in the public policy and advocacy department, and landscape in general. And the way that you bridge all that is just really incredible. And good public policy requires the right language, the right positioning, and the will of the people. And we appreciate you very much, and all others for their consistent efforts on the front lines regarding this. So speaking of consistent effort, next we have up Anderson Curtis. Anderson is our senior field organizer for the ACLU of Connecticut and is part of the heart and soul of our organization. Anderson has a gift for connecting with people, y'all. Not only connecting them to the work that we do, but connecting them to each other and connecting to elected officials to the issues that are important and that change the course of people's lives. Anderson, can you share with us your reflections on this session and maybe tell us a bit about how you stay fired up, for continued action this summer and for beyond as well?
Sure. Thank you, Erica. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Gus and Jess, first and foremost, and you as well, Erica. We had a very good year. We worked together. We learned some new things, all of us this year. And so I was excited about that. But, I want to talk to you all today about my favorite thing. I get to wear a shirt that says people, not prisons. And I love to talk about people. I love meeting people. My virtual background is the background of the Capitol. the legislative office building. And so, that building is the people's building. And so what we do here at Smart Justice, we have a campaign that's rooted and grounded in the lived experience of formerly incarcerated people like myself. We have leaders. Gus talked about them. We would not have a campaign without them. Many times we discuss what the policy is going to look like. What are we willing to fight for? What are we willing to let go? And those are some very intense conversations. And many, many times we have advocated for bills over the past 6 years where I would say 80 to 90% of the people in the campaign do not even benefit from those bills because of our criminal histories. But yet still we're out there advocating. Primarily what comes to mind is clean slate. So again, our people that show up, we are learning to live with this criminal record. We're learning to navigate life with this criminal record. And many of our policies are born out of our experience when we hit barriers such as housing, employment, education. And so, navigating all that, the collateral consequences is really a challenge. And, I just want to highlight making space for people, right? So making space in the campaign, what does that look like? Gus talked about some new campaign members that came into the session this year. I'm still on the leaders, and seeing them excited, looking to learn, coming into a meeting room, hearing the hearing, wanting to talk, and I shared some of my experience, and one of our values is our experience is our power. And I told them, I said, you could talk to the legislators about the policy, but that's what they know. I said, but primarily we brought you here to talk about your experience, because that's what they don't know. Right? The reason why you put on this shirt, the reason why you decided to come up to the Capitol today, the reason why you want to make a difference, right? Okay. And so bringing that lived experience into the building through testimony, Gus said we submitted over 20 pieces of written testimony. Gus had 12 people testify on the housing bill this year. We also testified in the secondary SOPS bill. That's very effective. And then continuing to lobby day after day with legislators, let them know about the humanity, the dignity, right? The pieces of the intangible parts that go into this, right? Because we're here to change the narrative, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to change the narrative of what formerly incarcerated looks like, what formerly incarcerated sounds like. But more importantly, what do people living with a criminal record need to achieve their dreams, to reconnect to their families, to become productive members of their community once again, right? And that's what this campaign is really all about. I would like to talk about something that's also very near and dear to my heart, besides bringing lived experience into the building and daily engagement with legislators, is also meeting supporters, meeting people who say, I may have never been formerly incarcerated, but I care about these issues. What can I do to help? Right? And so our campaign is vast enough that we can create space for those people to also join us in meaningful action, whether it's writing an email, whether it's submitting written testimony. I emailed over 50 people with a testimony that they could just simply sign their name to and make it part of their own, having a conversation with them, reached out to schools. Gus and I have done many educational webinars to colleges from Eastern to Hartford, UConn, to Quinnipiac also. And so, making space for people is so, so important. And, we had some ups and downs with our bills this year. We were able to move the housing bill out of committee. We were able to get some movement on the secondary STOPS bill. We had a great press conference. We had collaboration with Center for Police Equity. They came up and they talked about the press conference. And, there's some movement going on, but more importantly, we are also learning new relationships, new champions for our bills, new legislators that we are becoming to work with. Extremely excited to work with Rep. Felipe on our housing committee. We also formed a relationship with Rep. Khan, just one of the many people that we talk to all the time. And so, when I talk about collaboration, I really want to hone in on that because I think that is really the foundation for everything. So before you can get to a collaboration, what do you have to have? A relationship. Relationship is the foundation of collaboration. As an organizer, I am always in one of three phases of relationship development. either cultivating the relationship, sustaining the relationship, or deepening the relationship. So clear communication, listening, and respect are all active and established, which often leads to alignment of shared values. In my experience, the authenticity and vulnerability in sharing my lived experience invites others to step into their power. Shared values energize the collaboration for us to execute actions, whether they be in the community or at the Capitol. These actions are always about building people power. And that's what our organization is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Bringing people to whether it's the halls of the LOB to speak their truth to power, whether it's in a community, whether it's at a voter registration event. This is all the things that we work on. And, we bring people and we set them up for success, right? We take care of them in the space and we make sure that they want to come back for more. And so I'm just excited to see what next year looks like. We learned a few things this year, and how can we put them into play to be more effective in the building? Because that's what it's really about. It's about being effective in that building. And so I thank everybody for your time, and that's my contribution to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Anderson. There was so much that you said that I'm gushing about, but I appreciate how much you brought back that we're fighting for sustainability, right? And maintaining relationships and the importance of people and centering people, right? So thank you so much for that. Last but not least, we will hear from our executive director, David McGuire. David has an expertise in some of the issues we will tackle this year at the ACLU. So David, can you walk us through what happens next for the team and what some of the priorities will be when we champion in the future, at legislative sessions?
Sure. Thanks for the good question, Erica, and for hosting the panel today. So folks that don't know me, I'm David McGuire. I've been here for almost 17 years, and I've done a bunch of different things at the affiliate. I'm the executive director now. And today I'm here to provide some context about the team's work, the success that they talked about, and also to preview some areas that you'll see us involved in more in future sessions. I want to start by thanking the team, everyone that's on this call today. They really did step up, as Anderson said. We were without a political director this year, so that allowed our team to really stretch and grow. And despite one of the more challenging sessions I ever remember, they really moved things forward. Also want to thank the Smart Justice leaders who really gave it their all this session, like they have the last 6. They are just tremendous advocates. They really bring a presence and an authenticity that makes the advocacy that we do work. And I'll be real, we would have not had the success we had this year without them. To give you a little bit more context on what Jess Anderson and Gus have talked about, I want to frame out just what this session was like for advocacy groups in the Capitol this year. It was a session from day one where the governor and legislative leaders said, don't expect much. We don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of time, and we're not going to call a lot of bills for hearings. So right from the start, our team had to work doubly hard to get our priority bills public hearings. For context, in a short session like we had this year, only committees can raise bills. So in a longer session, any legislator can go to the committee and raise a bill. It doesn't mean it's going to get a hearing, but it will be on the Connecticut General Assembly calendar, and it will start a conversation. This year, our team had to work very hard to get our secondary stop bill and our housing anti-discrimination bills, the hearings that they got. They fought very, very hard. And I remember a conversation over lunch with our PPAD team right before the deadline for the Housing Committee to raise bills, where we were lamenting about how difficult it was. And we really were just pulling out every stop we could over the weekend. And the team pulled a rabbit out of their hat, and the Smart Justice leaders did get that bill a hearing. Like I've mentioned, and Gus mentioned as well, it was an incredibly powerful hearing where there was just really real testimony that you could see the legislators really reacting to. It was waking them up to how big of an issue discrimination is for people with criminal records as it applies to housing, and how hard it makes families have to work to just find a place to live. So, despite all of the challenges, that bill did get raised and did get voted out of committee. So this is the kind of momentum that we really need coming into next year, where we have a long session and have something to build upon in terms of relationships and having a bill get out of committee. The other thing that we've done very well this year, and this is in large part Jess Saccadino, our policy counsel, worked very hard in the last 72 hours of session to stave off some negative bills. A big part of what we do is also make sure that anti-civil liberties and civil rights bills do not get across the finish line. And one of the areas that we've seen a lot of negative proposals, and unfortunately some have passed in past sessions, is around the Freedom of Information Act. That's an important act to everyone in the state because it's the act that allows us to get transparency and information about what the government is doing or not doing. There were a couple of really dangerous carve-outs that were being offered, as well as a bill that would make it very, very expensive for people to get body camera footage, something that we've worked really hard to obtain. And if there's a big price tag on body camera footage, people will not get that information. Jess and our team worked very hard at the last minute, and we're there to the very end of the session to make sure that several malicious bills did not get through at the 11th hour. So that's a kind of summary of what happened in some framing. I'm excited to talk a little bit, Erica, about something that we're going to get more involved in moving forward, and that's the issue around the regulation of artificial intelligence. For folks to remember, we were involved on this issue last year alongside several other advocacy groups in making sure that the government's use of algorithms is transparent and we understand how it's being used and where it's being deployed. We work with the Yale Law School's Media Information and Access Clinic, as well as the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and helping to get that bill through. And now, because of our work, there's an inventory on the Connecticut state government's page of each department that's using AI and why and what they're using it for. That's not a perfect solution, but it's a first step to creating awareness and transparency around it. This year, the Senate Democrats introduced a bill called SB2, which was a large bill that sought to regulate the commercial use of artificial intelligence. We worked really, really hard with the National ACLU Consumer Reports and the Center for Democracy and Technology to do our best to make this bill as strong as possible and also make sure that some of the provisions did not offend the First Amendment. It's really important that the state of Connecticut get our arms around this quickly because we believe that AI is an important civil rights issue and will become an even bigger one as we move forward. This is a space that we really just cannot sit on the sidelines, and we will be more engaged in moving forward.
Thank you so much for all of that, David. Excuse me. Can you expand further on the AI bills and maybe especially around like why does this matter to Connecticut, and what does AI even have to do with civil rights?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So it's a technology that you've likely heard a lot about in the news, but many residents and lawmakers don't really have their arms around what this technology means for day-to-day life. It's a technology that is evolving rapidly and it's clearly outpacing the law. And it's something that we need to catch up on in terms of preventing discrimination, chiefly. That's the main issue that we're concerned about, Erica. We do know that AI is often deployed in areas that are crucial for civil rights. We're talking about the areas of employment, housing, policing. So these are areas that we believe the state needs to be proactive in building a strong regulatory scheme. Because at the end of the day, this is a real racial justice issue, and it's not going to go away.
Thank you so much for expanding on that. And I kind of wanted to ask a question around Connecticut has historically taken leadership on a lot of things like this. And can you maybe explain why it would be important for Connecticut to maybe take leadership on this particular issue area in regards to AI and regulating it?
Absolutely. You're exactly right, Erica. We have gotten ahead of several technologies. For example, we worked tirelessly back probably 7 or 8 years ago to curb law enforcement use of tracking cell phones. And we've done a lot of work on license plate readers and other privacy issues. But AI is something that's really going to touch every aspect of everyone's lives. And it's one that we think that the ACLU of Connecticut is really well positioned to be a thought leader on, to pull people together and to make sure that we are creating an environment where AI can evolve, but can evolve in ways that do not hurt residents here in Connecticut. We are really hopeful that down the road, after we figure out regulations for AI, that we can find ways to use AI to develop opportunities to advance equity. Ultimately, it is a powerful technology that we think if rolled out properly in certain contexts could actually aid in more equitable decisions. But as the state of play is right now, it's unregulated and dangerous. So we're planning to do a bunch more public awareness. I think you will definitely see this back at the Capitol next year. So we'll continue to work on that. And excitingly, we're doing some strategic planning right now. So our board and supporters will have lots of robust discussion about ways to keep everyone up to date on developments and how to fold this into our work moving forward. So I encourage everyone on the webinar today to stay on our website to really follow this issue with us, because it is a very crucial AI issue, and it's going to impact civil rights moving forward.
Thank you so much, David. I think there's so much importance around that. Things are growing and changing, and there's ways that we can regulate it, and it's also like a good thing if if it's regulated in that way. So thank you for highlighting. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for this wonderful discussion. And we are going to transition into our Q&A area. And so we pulled a lot of threads, here, and we want to give you all a chance to ask questions. There are some that are asked in the Q&A section, so I will go through them. But before I read them, if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, please don't worry. There will be plenty of opportunities to follow up on these issues and get involved with the ACLU of Connecticut. And you can also email us your question to info@acluct.org, and we will pass it to the proper department. So I'm going to go through the questions. I believe this can be asked by everyone. This is from Som Solnit. They said, thank you to the entire Smart Justice team for your tireless advocacy. Were either of the two bills thus discussed passed into law?
I'll take that real quickly. Not this year. But I think kind of getting to what David talked about earlier, I think there's momentum that we really got started this year. And if you kind of use the analogy of a football game, we didn't get a touchdown necessarily, but we certainly moved the ball down the field and got a lot of first downs. And I think all the work that we did this year, we're certainly going to be able to build on next year, particularly when it comes to the housing bill, because that's something that obviously impacts everyone we work with and is really at the forefront of the work that we're doing. So we have a lot of good stuff that we can build on for next year. Eric, I think you're muted.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, can you tell us what the cash bail system looks like in Connecticut and what kind of work the ACLU of Connecticut is doing around?
I'll take that one too, real briefly. But cash bails is in our state constitution, but it's absolutely wild and wrong that anybody would be incarcerated based on the resources they have, their ability to pay to buy their freedom. It's something that needs to change in Connecticut. And there was a resolution, House resolution, that was introduced last year as well, that would amend the state constitution when it comes to cash bail. Two of our Smart Justice leaders testified on how they were incarcerated pre-trial simply because they didn't have enough money to be able to buy their freedom, which again is a crazy concept here in Connecticut. So that's an issue that did not get passed this year, but it's something that again is probably going to be coming back next year. I think there's a really growing awareness that incarcerating somebody before they're convicted simply because they don't have the resources, the means, the cash to be able to buy their way out of jail, while another person does have the money to be able to buy their way out of jail, is absolutely wrong. And we need to come up with a much better system to address that. So that's certainly going to be another issue that we work on moving forward.
Thank you so much, Chris. So there's another question. There's three more. Are inequalities in healthcare and environmental degradation within your remit? If so, any anticipated activities next year?
Yeah, I can take that. So as I said earlier, I send out a bunch of written testimony over the legislative session, and that question named two areas we were actively trying to expand into commenting on more. Last year and this past session, I definitely remember submitting testimony on things like indoor air quality and water quality in schools, which we because of environmental racism, kids of color are most often affected by the quality of air and water in our schools. There's a few other environmental bills that I at least either keep an eye on or submit testimony on, in addition to public health, because we know that so much of the issues that we work on intersect with public health. I'm not sure of what will be going on next year. In those two issue areas, I usually tend to see where community partners are going and follow their lead, but it's definitely an area that I'm passionate about trying to expand into more. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Jess. Two more questions, y'all. This question is, I know you've all done so much work in so many areas this session. Where do you see your work having the most impact?
I'd like to jump on that one, guys. So impact. To me, the impact is what I talked about a little while ago, building people power, right? So bringing people into the process in a way that they can participate at their pace so they feel comfortable, right? B, letting them know that when they speak their truth to power, your experience is your power, that not only is that validating, it's being seen, it's being heard, and in some ways, for me, it's been healing. You know, it's take a past experience and change that memory, right? And so there's no greater joy I have than bringing people into that building and see the look on their face. You want to talk about impact, right? When A, they get to go talk to a legislator, and B, they're like, it sounded like, wow, they actually listened to me. Or they can stop them again. I watched one of our leaders this year build a relationship with the legislator from his district as a constituent, right? And where can that go, right? And so, you know, the beauty of our job is, you know, we not only do we give people a platform, but we give them support, right? And so that impact to me is priceless. You know, the support that we offer, not just to our formerly incarcerated people, but also to our supporters who come take time out of their life and show that they care, you know, because we're all justice impacted, right? So now how can we become hope impacted? And really that's where my joy lies, is sharing some hope, being realistic about our expectations, but also knowing that nobody's going to outwork us in that building. And we're going to be back next year and the year after that. And we're going to be a continued presence, respectful presence, but we are going to be a presence in that building. And that's our impact, I believe. And lastly, that goes to one of our values. Solidarity is our impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anderson. There's so much there around what people can look forward to in many ways. And regardless of how we explained the session this year, there were so many wins and so many wonderful things that happened. And I'm just incredibly proud of all the work being done and very grateful for all the work that you all do. Last question is essentially asking that now that the session is over, like what is some work happening, you know, planned for the rest of the year? And also how can maybe like an average person potentially get involved with the work that we're doing?
I don't know, I'm going on vacation for the rest of the summer. No, I'm only kidding.
Hopefully everyone is resting. Hopefully everyone rest and that.
I can take that though. As I just said, I think we're all taking a good vacation, but after that, we are coming back to do work on our political action committee. The first time around that we had our political action committee, we worked on early voting in Connecticut, which passed. And the system of early voting that we have is in large part what we were recommending the entire time, 14 days of voting, including weekends, morning hours, evening hours, whatnot. And that was great. We knocked tons of doors, I think at least well into the thousands last year, 2 years ago for that. And we're coming back again this year for a constitutional amendment on no excuse absentee voting, which is another way to make voting more accessible in our state. We are only one of, I think, 15 or so states that do not have no excuse absentee voting. It's particularly important for disabled people, people that live in more rural areas, older folks, people who otherwise don't have great access to transit. Really tons of people benefit. And we will be doing, on my end, I'll be doing some policy research, making Know Your Rights guides. So when you guys do go to vote early and vote yes on the no excuse absentee voting question, You have those resources, but our lovely field team, who should probably jump in after I finish talking, is going to be knocking doors yet again. And I'm sure that that is a way that folks can volunteer with us to spread the word and get more information out. But if anyone on field wants to jump in and talk a bit more about volunteering, that would be great.
Erica, we could throw that to you, but like Jess said, yeah, we're going to be out and about around the state, knocking on doors, talking about the no excuse absentee ballot question, making sure folks know about the early voting periods that are coming around for the very first time this year. And if folks are interested in coming out and knocking on doors with us, I think it's going to be stay tuned on that though. But we plan on being out and about August, September, October, all the way leading up to Election Day. Making sure folks know about the absentee ballot question and making sure folks can get registered to vote. I know Anderson's going to be doing a lot of work around voter registration this year too. So, during the legislative session, we're at the Capitol, but this is the fun time when the weather gets a little bit nicer and we're able to kind of stretch our legs and get around the state. So excited about that.
I also want to add, I forgot to say that the early voting period this year will be from October 21st to November 3rd. There's a break of 2 days, and then you can vote on Election Day, and you can same day register as well. So had to say that.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure there was that space before I jumped in, but yeah, as Gus mentioned, being able to stretch our legs and be across the state is a direct way to connect with us and be able to support the work that we're doing and directly be talking to people in real time, and connecting, hearing their experiences and really offering tools and ways of engagement. So that's really, really exciting, and we're really, really looking forward to it. Okay, well, if there's nothing else to share, we're going to close out this conversation. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Before we go, many have asked how you can continue to support our work. And there are lots of great ways that you can support the ACLU of Connecticut. And that could be via donations, communications, volunteering, as we just mentioned, and various other efforts. So please visit our website at ACLU-CT.org. Again, ACLU-CT.org. We are also on major social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And we would love to connect with you there. We have put this information in the chat for you to copy as well. So please take a second to look through that. And the next several months are crucial to the efforts we talked about here today. Please stay informed and active with the ACLU of Connecticut. Our team has dropped our information in the chat, and we encourage you to follow up and stay in touch. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. We want to engage with you. As so many of our colleagues today have explained, we really encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube, as many organizers are taking to these spaces recently, and we like to stay connected there. We also work with a number of incredible organizations across the state, some of whom are listening to this webinar today. Hello, y'all. We want to give a special shout out to the Center for Policing Equity for their work this session and for the support of ACLU-CT strategies. Thanks again to our panelists and listeners. Just want to remind you that our YouTube, our social medias, everything is available via in the chat. Please don't forget our website is available, ACLU-CT.org, with lots of information. And yes, that is in closing of our panel discussion today. Thank you again to our panelists and the listeners. And yeah, we're gonna see you soon.
Let's hear it for our moderator. Great job, Erica. Thank you so much. Thank you.